Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Blues Talk. Again, John, Dave and myself going to look back over Ireland's workman-like performance against Scotland last weekend, all the other Six Nations action, and of course look forward to Leinster's match at the weekend against Zebre. Well, gladly we're back after a few technical gremlins and ghosts in the machine, but we are back. So boys, we beat Scotland 22-13 over in Murrayfield, made heavy weather of it.
Certainly did. It looked on the day. It was kind of. It was a kind of an. It's like going to McDonald's. You know, you feel hungry again after finishing it. It was kind of. You felt like it wasn't a very satisfying win at the time. But the further away we get from it, the more I'm going. You know, it was a win. Would have been nice to get the fourth try, but the way England are going. We didn't know it at that stage, but they went in and hammered France the next day, so it's hard to see anybody stopping them slamming, and Wales really are the only ones that can do it, and the only other ones that can have a slam at this stage. So I don't think it's the end of the universe. I think if we do a bit of building against Italy and come back and have a strong France and Wales game, I think it might be off the table now to win the championship unless Wales absolutely destroy England, which is hard to see.
It has to be a significant run of results.
Yeah, and a few things have to happen. So it looks like second place is the best we're going to do. With that in mind, I think it's the dust has settled on it now. It's a pretty good win. Like Scotland and Murrayfield, they're never an easy beat. Well, rarely an easy beat. So. It's good to get the win. Good to get back in the winning column after the first weekend.
Leaving aside Australian pop music bands from the 60s.
Okay.
The easy beats. No, I mean it was a good. I mean, at the end of the day, after losing to England, losing quite badly, and a lot of questions been asked. You know, what would have been more important: a good performance in losing, or just winning? And the answer, of course, is just winning. You know, you can fix. It's easy to fix performances in a winning once you've got the win under your belt. I mean, and there were a lot of performances that need fixing. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, it wasn't a good performance for 20 minutes after losing Sexton, we looked completely rudderless. I mean, there was a distinct whiff of rabble about us because, you know, between losing Sexton and then you have Carberry, Aki and Farr, which is a really unfamiliar combo. They wouldn't be familiar with each other. Then you have, you know, Murray there at scrum half, who's not back in form yet. So you've got that whole kind of axis there, 9, 10, 12 is, you know, and Aki's not playing all that well either. So you've got 9, 10, 12 in a kind of a bit of a gicker in a way. You know, so to come through that and come out the other side where we were in a position where we could think that maybe a bonus point might be an option is actually a good thing. Now, personally, at the time I was disappointed that they took the points when they had that final penalty, the final penalty we scored. But on reflection and retrospect, it's probably the right decision. Get the win. And then there was still 10 minutes left to worry about the bonus point.
And there was huge pressure on that team to get the win, as you said, you know? Yeah. Like, could you imagine the naysayers if we had lost that match? You know?
You might have been joining them.
Possibly so, but I was just listening to Off the Ball and like there was kind of a football pundit who was rubbing his hands together with the thoughts of Ireland losing and maybe some of the bandwagon dissipating and going back to other sports, you know. But some of the performances were exceptional. Like our defence on the line was absolutely magnificent.
Superb.
Like, and you know, a lot of it
Mahoney made one incredible tackle to take down a maul before it even got started. I mean, he just flew out of that with no care or attention to his own safety.
There was another incident where I think Carney rushed up and took almost man and ball, but it made the pass that subsequently the guy went to check and he you know, if that ball had been out in front of him, I'm sure that was a try on the stroke of half time. We went in 12-10 up instead of going in minimum 15-12 down, possibly 17-12 down.
There was a big swirly wind as well, and the thing that something I didn't realise at the time, I just heard it today, that Josh Strauss set a new Scottish record for tackles at 29. And not only that, but there's two other guys in the high 20s as well. I can't remember offhand who they were, but like that's some defensive performance, and to think that we managed to beat, I wouldn't say beat well, but it was never in doubt in the second half. Once we got when we got over the intercept and all that,
we
got rolling. The second half, now okay, Scotland did conspire to shoot themselves in the foot on many occasions with their handling, and but still, I think we, despite the fact that they had such a huge defensive performance, and they did go after us, like they weren't trying to.
Mm-hmm.
They were definitely up for smashing us. They'd seen England's game plan the previous week and gone, hold on a minute, let's have a bit of that, and we won't give them a minute to settle and see how we get on. Now, didn't work out as well for them as it did for England, because they don't have two Vunipola brothers and a few other luminaries to have the cattle that England do in that department. But they certainly gave it everything. I think actually maybe Johnny Gray was one of the other high tacklers. High amount of tackles as in tackling.
It goes to show the amount of possession that Ireland had. If those lads are making 20 odd tackles in a game, yet Scotland cumulatively missed 26, and we missed 23. So there's still a lot of missed tackles in that game. Normally it's kind of in the teens rather than in
no
the 20s.
Teens at that. Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine Joe Schmidt would not be happy with that figure. Although ironically, one of the guys, I mean, not ironically, but there were guys who had question marks over them who actually played quite well in terms of. I mean, there's been questions in the past, not always deserved, although sometimes, because we saw him playing for Ulster against Leinster at Christmas there last year, over Stockdale's defence. His defence was excellent, I thought. Made a couple of really good tackles. So
he's just a cracking player. I mean, we'll see his try.
Oh yeah, he's maturing in front of our eyes. Like we'll see his try later, but he's turned into the real deal, And it has to be remembered. We were missing a number of significant players. I mean, obviously Devin Toner was out, and then the two guys who'd be most likely to replace him were out. CJ Stander was out. Our first, what looks like now being our first choice centre partnership,
and I think that was probably the most notable combination of players that were missing.
Yeah,
just looks like there's so much more creativity when Ringrose and Henshaw play compared to Aki and another.
Well, let's face it, the centre
pairing. Anyone is a more creative.
Well, sure enough, yeah, but like we do miss him, and there's no one can come in there and replace Ringrose for creativity. The other guys can come in and do a job and truck it up and make big hits, but
in fairness, Fedler has a great set of hands on him.
But by the time the ball got to him, it was so slow there was nothing. I mean, you could have the hands of Mercury and you weren't going to do anything with it because the ball was so slow. I'd say if this game had been the Italy game, if the Italy game had followed the England game, we might have seen Addison been played. But Joe has seen Farrell. He knows he's good. He's played him in Six Nations before, so I mean, he's not going to take a risk in a game that he kind of has to win.
He had to.
So he's not going to take any risks there. So Farrell was a lower risk. And I don't mean that as he's been negative, because we've seen Chris Farrell, he's a really good player. But in terms of the risk return between him and a guy who's never had an opportunity to give any return, then obviously he's going to go with Farrell, and it's the right call to make. I mean, and just going back to guys kind of that kind of theme of defensive redemption, Keith Earls had a good game, I thought. Rob Kearney had an excellent game.
In my opinion, Rob Kearney was man of the match. I thought he was absolutely superb, and the difference in his marshalling of the defence. And you never felt, now okay, maybe Scotland don't have quite as sophisticated a kicking game as England do, and the way we saw them against France, but you never felt that there was large gaps. Like, he seems to cover every blade of grass, or he narrows angles, and he's almost telepathic in how he reads the play, which we didn't see from Henshaw when he was a fullback against England. Now, it's not probably comparing like with like, but Finn Russell is still a very fine player and can find plenty of green space as well,
He is a very fine player, yeah. Somebody mentioned, actually, it was the Demented Mole guys last week said that if you look at Kearney's physique, he's a lot lighter than Henshaw. It's an interesting angle. Like that Henshaw in the years since he's played full back has bulked up a lot to play centre. Like even Darcy and O'Driscoll, who would be considered small guys in the centre, were fairly bulky. They were, and the kind of lean physique that you need to run around, because you've got to cover a lot of ground at full back. There's a lot of ground back there, and you've got to be in all the places that Rob Kearney gets to. You've got to do a lot of running around.
Yeah.
And maybe Henshaw, apart from the lack of experience or recent experience, doesn't quite have the physique. He's much more of a centre physique wise, which I thought was a very interesting point.
I think the fact that he hasn't played in that position for
that's a huge part of it.
4 years. I don't know how long it is, but 3 years I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Has to be a contributing factor as well. Conor Murray still doesn't look like he's on his game, does he?
No, he's seems to be. I don't know what it is. Is it the injury that he's not trusting his body? But his passing seems to be erratic. And he doesn't have that sharpness that he used to have. That he'd snipe. He'd always look dangerous every time he got the ball. He doesn't have that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Even his box kicking isn't as high and as.
It certainly wasn't as accurate.
It
was going 5 meters further than like. There's a difference between a guy going up and at the peak of his arc to catch the ball than when he's just running and the guy is receiving it on the ground 3 meters away from where he can manage to do a sidestep and evade the defender coming up.
So some guys come back from injury different. Players come back from injury differently. Some guys are able to hit the ground running straight away, and some guys need to play their way back in. I think maybe Conor Murray's playing his way back in. Because on his day, and we saw against, who was it against? In
Gloucester,
Europe,
was it? Gloucester.
Gloucester, his kicking was absolutely on the net. He destroyed them with his kick. The game was over after 10 minutes because of his kicking. So I think it's just a matter of being patient with him. Because I do think, whoever is there, Marmion is a very good player. We all have a fondness for Luke McGrath, and some people like John Cooney. But there's a massive difference between Conor Murray in any kind of form and the rest. He's himself and Aaron Smith are the two best scrum halves in the world, and when they're on form, and by considerable distance, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
One guy that did, I suppose, get a bit of a start, got started in the game a bit earlier than he was expecting to, was Carberry, who came on after, was it 23 minutes?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I thought he started off very nervously. Then his confidence was obviously dented when he threw the intercept pass, but he came back and threw a beautiful pass out to Earls for his try.
Yeah, that was super. It was really good.
It was a lovely bit of skill. Yeah.
He had to throw that pass while he was still moving pretty fast, and he had to throw that pass. He obviously got the call. You could see he looked up, got the call, and he executed it beautifully up and over the top. He didn't have any other options. He wasn't going to make the line, but Earls just happened to come in the right place at the right time, and the right pass.
Yeah, it was off his weekend, and he threw it 15-20 metres.
It was a wonderful piece of skill. He's still not good at half them.
No, I don't know. I disagree.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd have to disagree, but I think he got a bit of unfair criticism for when he threw the intercept pass and he was chasing back Finn Russell,
mm-hmm.
and Finn Russell was lying on his back. Some people were saying, he should have blocked, but I don't think he could. I thought it was a fantastic bit of awareness from Russell rather than,
mm-hmm.
You have to applaud the skill of the attacker rather than the defenders there.
Well, he only had, there was only two things, he could only do one of two things. He's not Paddy Peel, he can't be in two places at once kind of thing, if you believe in that kind of thing. There was only two things he could do in the situation he was in. He could either stay with the man, and that would have left the tackler on his own with the tackled player. So all Russell would have to do is release the ball, get back up, and he could go again. Or he could join the ruck.
Mm-hmm.
So if he stays with the man and Russell goes again, then he gets blamed for that. If he goes and joins the ruck, which is what he did, and Russell's able to, the man is left free, then he's going to get blamed for that. It was one of those 50-50 calls. He didn't really have a huge amount of... unless he got lucky, in a way, by making the exact right call, which would have been based purely on instinct rather than anything else, then he was going to be in trouble. So, you could be... Yes, it is possible to be critical about the decision he made, but it's only possible to be critical in hindsight. You couldn't actually say at the time that he made the wrong decision, because he had to make one of two decisions. He happened to make the wrong one. It just happens,
And also, your man Johnson was behind him. So wherever Carberry ran, he could just run to somewhere else, you know.
Yeah.
Not much else he could do. Do you have the tries lined up?
I do
Dave?
indeed, yes.
Throw them in there.
I thought we looked so
Murray
nervous in the opening 10 minutes.
Murray Kinsler did a piece on the Stockdale try, which is pretty good. But that was just pure. What the hell were Scotland doing?
Well, there's actually an example of Conor Murray not been on it.
Yeah,
You know,
because he could have ran
he should have gone under the
15
post.
metres to the
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
And if you remember, during
And we missed
a
the
European
kick.
Cup match last year for Munster, where the ball squirted out the back of a scrum or a ruck,
yeah.
and he just looked up at the referee and said, "Can
Yeah.
I touch it?" And he tipped it down.
Because he's normally so sharp.
Yeah,
mentally.
exactly.
He's normally so mentally sharp, and and that's just indicative that he's not quite right yet. So I mean, it was nice play. I mean, Stockdale is lethal in those situations when he gets that chip in. It causes
He
havoc.
loves an old chip, doesn't
Yeah.
he?
You even see Keith Earl tell him to get in with the posts.
But as a result, Sexto got a knock and missed the kick. I mean, he shanked the kick.
Yeah, he
Shanked the
missed
kick.
it very badly.
Well, he was probably just concerned. He did have a look over his shoulder though, and he probably saw there was nobody, so he could have easily gone in under the post and made it a handy kick. But hey, what you gonna do?
This is one of the ones from the playbook.
This is the one, yeah. There's so many little elements to it.
Moving parts.
Boom, there we go. And that man is so fast. Because he's so tall, his legs don't seem to be going at the rate. Like Sean Cronin with his little small legs, they're going.
He does just eat up the ground when he gets moving. So he does.
You see how fast he was travelling there, and his stride is just very long.
Yeah.
It's not that he has to take lots of steps to get moving at that
Was he on
speed.
2 tries every 3 games or something?
I
Yeah.
just checked this earlier. That was his 12th international try in 16 games, which is a .75 try in every game.
Jeez.
That's pretty.
He's had
And-
3 tries in 4 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's some record.
And I just, for kind of comparison, Brendan Mullen, who held the Irish try scoring record
Forever.
for a long, long time,
Mm.
he got his 17 tries, okay, 5 more than Stockdale, but it took him 55 caps to get
Yeah.
those 17 tries.
What
That
a
record's still
burst of
forever.
speed.
For a long, long time.
Yeah.
For maybe 15 years until O'Driscoll.
Yeah.
Or Hickey, was it?
O'Driscoll and Hickey traded it between them for a while, so they did. And until O'Driscoll.
I think he's on
played
40
away.
something.
Yeah.
O'Driscoll is now.
If he continues at this pace, he will beat it. I mean,
Yeah.
he's an extraordinary player.
But like he's doing it for Ulster as well. Like
Oh yeah, he's scored a lot of tries.
You know,
yeah.
like it's not just that he's on the end of a few intercepts for Ireland,
And
which he is, of course. He's also doing it for Ulster.
he's scoring different kinds of tries as well. I mean, funny enough, we've seen the chip and chase a couple of times.
Yeah.
But he's scoring tries, you know, he's going around guys, he's going through guys, he's going under guys. He's getting tries where he just stays wide and just has to dot it down over the line. He's scoring all sorts of tries.
And I'd say that was his best one because that was superb.
That was
That was
a superb
excellent,
play. Yeah.
And we spoke about this one briefly earlier.
Yeah. Super Rob making a super break.
That was his about third line break in
Mm-hmm.
the in the second half.
Cian Healy plays Conor Murray and
Two
passes.
terrible
Two
passes.
terrible
as-
passes
just as high.
and 2 terrible tackles.
But sometimes that actually you can get a terrible pass, and because the
Defence
defenders are
rushes up. Yeah.
are expecting something else, they aren't really properly.
And the other,
Focused.
see, Earls was watching Conor Murray, so he knew to run in under the post. But it's just that pass as well would have been easy to throw forward, given the way he was moving, you know. But he managed to keep it flat, completely flat.
Well, his technique is such that, I mean, he has good technique at passing. I mean, there was no, even if the ball had gone 10 miles forward, it was never going to be a forward pass because his hands are so clearly going backwards. It's such, I mean, it's a model technical pass as well as anything else.
It really was a shocking pass. But luckily, like you say, David, followed up by some shocking tackling. Carberry's not exactly a slouch either, though. Your man came in flying in after him there. Whoever that Scottish player was pretty fast.
But you know what they say? Ball goes quicker than the man.
That's true.
They obviously never saw that Sean O'Brien pass.
Exactly.
doesn't always go in the right direction.
So you mentioned Sean O'Brien. Unfortunately, unfortunately, he's decided to up sticks and head over to the Big Smoke.
Yes, he has. He's gone to that London to play for London Irish, who will be in London by the time he arrives there.
Well, they won't actually be the following season.
Is it the following? I thought it was next season they're going to Brentford. No,
following.
All right.
But yeah, it's sad to see him go. Of course it is. But given all he's done for us, you can't begrudge him getting the extra few quid.
Was he 11 seasons here?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, well, he was. When did we start doing Blues Talk? Or not Blues Talk, Blood, Sweat and Beers, because that was his first year. So that would have been 2007. 2007, 2008.
Yeah, it sounds like the year he made his
first year
debut,
in the thing. Because remember, he was the only one. We used to interview him a lot because he was so obliging, like, and he was a young player, and he was very obliging.
Subs were quite happy to talk to us.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is a big loss for Leinster because when he's fit, I mean, he's our best back row. I mean, it's not even in doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, he's 32, which means he's only going to get 1 year contracts from now on anyway, because that's kind of the way the IRFU do it. This way, he's getting 3 years.
Will he finish it as a 36-year-old?
Doesn't matter. Well, here's the thing: like, if he doesn't finish it, his insurance claim is based on 3 years, not on 1 year. You know, say if he gets injured in his first game in September for Leinster, then his insurance is only for a year. So his payout's only for a year's lost salary, or you know what I mean. Whereas with London Irish, it's a 3 year contract. So there's all this. I mean, that's obviously the overriding reason, but all these things feed into the decision you make when you decide to take a contract abroad. Well, because I mean, his Irish career is over once he goes.
Apparently, he's not going to be anywhere close to being outside the cap, as in being one of the two marquee players that they have over there, because they're signing a few other. There's talk of them signing Waisaki Naholo, for example. They're signing. They're signing several people. And reputedly Paddy Jackson as well. But they're going to have a few Kiwis that are going to finish their World Cup and go to London Irish.
So you're saying that in 2 years' time we'll be playing them in the Heineken Cup?
Pretty much, yeah. Because we'll have to wait for them to go to Brentford before we do it.
Well, we'll see. I mean, he's a big loss to Leinster. I mean, his time at Ireland, obviously at 32, and there's guys coming up. But we saw on Saturday just what a difference he makes, because he just carries so hard, he tackles so hard, he's good in the ruck. He's, apart from that pass, he's decent enough with his hands. You know, it's.
And what I've heard said about him in the last week from several pundits is that he's very vocal.
He's a leader in the team.
Oh, he really
total
is, yeah.
leader, you know. So that's going to be handy.
I just think it's a shame that someone who goes 11 years in their career doesn't end up staying there and finishing it. I know there's a huge amount of money on the table, and I'm sure the offer that he was probably going to get compared to what he is on in a central contract, I'm sure there's a big gap between the two. And I can understand 100% why you've got
I'd say
two or three more years of rugby, and you know.
Say it might be more like what Dave says about the contract length as much as the contract
of course,
price.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm sure I don't know about that. I think Leinster could have offered him a 2 year deal, but it would have been on a Leinster contract rather than a central contract. And I'm sure the money situation.
We have a question here from Michael Keogh. Michael Keogh asks, how many more Leinster players could be gone after the World Cup? Rob Kearney, Devin Toner, Keane Healy, as most are out of contract after the World Cup, but that's not unusual. That's the
Toner's another year, I think.
That's the cycle anyway. But then Declan Corkin says, I don't mind players moving on for their own choices. SLB is injury prone, a huge cost. Well, I don't know how much he earns. Is he a huge cost? He's certainly not costing Leinster at him.
Well, as far as I know, he used to cost Dennis O'Brien.
Yeah, he didn't cost Leinster a penny, so I don't know what the issue is there. And as much as we love him, he's in the final years of his career, which he certainly is, and he wants some money. Paul O'Connell less pressure. So if other players come to the end of their career, choose this path, so be it. Leinster will produce more talent. What I'm really worried about is how many players in contract will the IRFU force to move now that they've set the precedent with Carberry and Nordy. The only good news out of SOB leaving is that Levy or Josh van der Fleer won't be forced to move.
People seem to be very knowledgeable on this forced to move stuff, and obviously we all know about Carberry. But even with Carberry,
well, people were coming out. No, that's bullshit, John, because people were coming out quite strongly as if they knew they had an inside track to Geordie Murphy. And actually, if they listened to what he said subsequently, he wasn't not offered a Leinster contract. He made a decision to move because he wanted to play first team football. Nothing to do with, as people were coming out and writing it, because he writes on Leinster fans suddenly means that it's the truth, which of course it isn't. When there were people who were writing on Leinster fans, I've heard that he didn't get offered a Leinster contract and that's why he's moving. That's bullshit. Clearly bullshit. When the player comes out and says the exact opposite of what people are saying.
In fairness, he kind of pays much attention to what people say to Leinster fans and what players say in an interview as well.
They're hardly going to say, I didn't really
want to move, but I had no choice, so I'm stuck here in Belfast. He's not going to say that.
Well, what he did say, though, Dave, is he gave the reasons for his move, which was he wanted to play first team football.
I fully accept that, but I'm just saying, if you take one with salt, you have to take the other with pepper,
Well, no, because I would rather than some nameless, faceless person on the internet, when a player is being questioned and it's a one-to-one interview, he should, I'm sure, maybe he tells a few little white lies, however, I'm sure that he's held up to account more so than somebody sitting at home in their mother's basement typing out on the internet.
That's them told, Jason. That's them told.
But the other side of that is, I agree with you about his reasons for moving. By the way, I think he's a guy who was he's a first team player.
Every single interview, that is what he has said is the reason for his move.
He is.
Doesn't seem to have done him any good with Joe Schmidt, though, does it?
I remember when Declan Kidney was in charge, you couldn't find players lining up to say nice things about him. Then the moment he left, they were lining up to not say nice things about him.
That's not true at all. Dricko wrote a book and he was very critical of him. He actually said in his book that the reason why he was speaking to Biarritz and Toulouse was because he was learning nothing when Kidney was coach of Leinster.
Yeah, but Kidney wasn't coach of Ireland at the time when that book came out. He wasn't. That came out when Eddie. Before Kidney took over.
Every dog on the street knew that Kidney was going to be the next Ireland coach. Come on.
I wouldn't be so sure. I wasn't sure.
Are you not just some bloke in his mother's basement saying that, Jason?
Okay.
But the other thing that there is this thing that people. The thing that really annoys me about is people talking about player salaries and injuries and contracts and stuff like that. I think that it should be a rule that if you want to discuss a player's salary or its contract length or whatever, you should put your salary and your contract length and your terms and conditions of employment in the first line of the post.
And then what about you quite regularly give out about players, or Leinster not giving out players information on their injuries?
I never give out about it. That's one thing I don't give out about.
About injuries?
No, I don't.
About medical updates?
No, I don't.
You do.
No, I've never complained about that. No,
have you not?
Something else. No. I think that that a person's private medical data is private information, and as such, they're entitled to decide whether it's released or not. No, I've never complained about that. No, I've complained about Leinster's use of the phrase "a week too soon," but more in a joking sense.
Well, injury updates and how you say that they would be quite bland and wouldn't really give us much information.
Yeah, no, they are bland. They don't give us much information, but I don't have a problem with them with players not actually saying what's wrong with them. I think that's absolutely correct. I work in IT. Privacy is a huge issue, and personal data is a huge issue in IT. I'm absolutely fine with that. For example, the Jamie Heaslip thing, I was fine with what he did. I'm fine with the way Conor Murray treated. And if some guy wants to come out and say, well, yeah, I've done this and that, the other to myself, that's fine too, because it should be the data owner's decision.
Fair enough, okay. Interesting comment that wasn't really picked up. What Schmidt was asked about O'Brien going, and obviously Zibo Ryan as well playing over in France, and he basically said, I'm going to paraphrase, he more or less said that the IRFU want to ensure that the people who go and watch the provincial teams playing will be seeing those players who play for the provincial teams playing for the Irish team, which couldn't endorse that attitude more.
Yeah, well, you don't want the League of Ireland situation.
No.
At one point in the League of Ireland was a huge league with massive attendances, and the best players played in it. The best Irish players played in it. One or two went abroad, but not many. And now you've got a situation.
None of them play.
Now you've got a situation where it is what it is. You could have an entire show about the state of the League of Ireland, and you still wouldn't come close to covering it. And the thing that's keeping the wolf from the door in rugby is the fact that it doesn't happen every week, but a lot of weeks you can go down and you can see the guys that were playing for Ireland the previous week You can see them play for Leinster the following week. Kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I was.
And that's really important.
The other day, I was sitting there watching the matches at home, and I was just thinking, God, between maybe 3 weekends ago, I went over to Leicester, and then I went to Coventry the next day, and between seeing Ulster guys playing and Leinster guys, I was thinking, God, I've seen half these, probably 3/4 of the team, only 3 weeks ago playing for two clubs. You know, I thought that was it's a great indictment of our system that you can do that, and as we mentioned earlier off air, like it is the only stick that the IRFU have.
Oh yeah,
is to keep, because if you see, like say it at Murrayfield the other day, there was 67,000 people watching a match. You know, that's huge. It must be a fantastic thing to do, to go out and play in front of that many people, and like the league doesn't really do that, and the European Cup rarely does that kind of have that atmosphere and interest in it. So the international rugby is massively bigger than the club games, whether they're league or Europe, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of it is, and it's not just about playing, it's actually those guys been around, been in the city, or you know, whatever. I mean, you go to a cool mind match and there's Irish international standing on the sideline kind of thing, or guys who are in the
Tom
Irish
Farrell,
squad, Tom Farrell for example, or you go to, you know, a game in Tullow and Sean O'Brien will be there, or whatever. That idea of those guys been in the community, been part of the community, even though they're international rugby players at the top of the profession, is very, very important, because what it does is it shows to young players that I can go there too. They become aspirational characters.
For sure. Yeah. Well, we'll turn our attention briefly to the other results of the weekend.
Oh no, we have to get Murdo's take on the match.
Oh, sorry, excuse me. Yes, fire away,
please. So Murdo was in touch. Was on a plane on holidays in France, so he missed the game. Only saw the highlights later. So well done,
A
Ireland.
likely story, Murdo.
We're well done, Ireland. We're looking forward to the World Cup, as I'm sure Scotland will reflect and give some confidence. Hopefully Hoggy will be back from injury soon for Glasgow Warriors after being taken out after chipping your man and taken out as he tried to pass them. I only found out today there was no yellow. Saw it and could not believe it. Was that why Laidlaw was so pissed at the ref? He doesn't seem to like us, does Roman. And he says in brackets, I've never seen or heard such before in an after live match interview. Was it a football reaction, or was it genuine frustration there? But he thinks there was a bit of a lack of class. Anyway, whereas many Scots have reflected that we've fucked up in the second half with too many mistakes and nothing to do with Quatchin. And he asked, is Finn still flaky or the real deal?
Oh, he's a lot closer to the real deal, I would have said. He's like, he was flaky. He's probably a lot less flaky. The kind of player he is, he's always going to get caught. He's a confidence player.
Yeah, a confidence player, and he plays high risk rugby. High risk rugby leads to
high risk, high reward.
High risk, high reward, high
failure
rate as well.
Chance of fucking up.
So that's the kind of is. I was actually for another reason I was looking at he's playing with Racing Metro aren't going all that well.
I thought they were joint top of the league.
They're sixth.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Fifth or sixth. Shows you how. Who were up there? Claremont and Toulouse?
Claremont and Toulouse.
Okay, I was thinking it was Racing and Toulouse. Sorry.
They're actually not going all that well.
They are second seed in Europe, though.
They are, and maybe they're a team that after last year have decided to concentrate on Europe because, you know, there's nothing worse than losing a final kind of thing. So maybe that's where their focus lies. So I wouldn't get overly confident.
Well, there's so many get into.
He's there with a team that's kind of.
Oh, we have to hope
not going quite so well as maybe the perception is.
Don't forget that in France, first of all, what is it? 8 teams get into the barrage.
Yeah,
6.
Is it 6? Sorry, okay. 6 get into the barrage, so you just have to be in your top 6.
Mm.
Also, don't forget that the way that their league is kind of until maybe April, it's all, if you've got 1 or 2 more home games, then all of a sudden you're ahead because, you know.
Just actually, because that's kind of why I was looking at it at the tables. And the two teams that are stretching out, Toulouse and Claremont, are actually going really well away from home.
Nice.
I think Toulouse have lost 1 and drawn 1, and Claremont have lost 2 and drawn 1, and the one they drew was against each other. So they're actually going really well both home and away. But then you look at the rest of the teams, and if you look at the W in red and
they're all home,
or the L in red, and nearly all the losses are away from home. You know, in that mid-table section, like between say 4th and 8th. So
there's probably only a few points separating them all out.
There's a bit of a gap opening up between the top 2 and the rest.
Okay.
But the point I'm making is that he's playing in France with a team that's maybe concentrating on other things apart from the top 14.
To knock that out of them.
Well, they're a real team of international players as well. Yes, there are French internationals playing for Racing, but there's quite a lot of non-French.
What did you think of Hogg's reaction to when he missed the try? Did you see that? Just
when he kicked
the hoarding and he smashed it actually.
At the end of the first half. Yeah, he gave it a good boot.
He was obviously quite pissed off.
Yeah.
What about that? Murdo did allude to it there when O'Mahony took him out. I actually thought it was Carney, but
it was O'Mahony and somebody else coming across. I can't remember who.
Rory Best.
It was Rory Best. Yeah.
What do you think? Was it? Did it merit a yellow?
Well, I'd have to look at it again. I didn't really look at it again.
You sound like Wenger now. I didn't quite see it from my position.
Well, I didn't see it. I didn't look at a replay of it after the game.
It was one of those that if it was a yellow, you kind of go, yeah, maybe not. And it's not a yellow, and you kind of go, yeah, maybe not. There was nothing clear about it. So I saw somebody, and actually it was the rugby correspondent for the Sunday Scotland Daily Mail or whatever. So you're talking about a newspaper a rugby columnist with a national newspaper. So they obviously have the same problem that we do. He was saying, how could that not be a sighting? It was clearly a yellow card. Right?
You don't get sightings unless it's clearly a red card.
Unless it's clearly a red, or it's called the red card test, and I think it's regulation 19. So if it's clearly a yellow card, then it can't be a sighting. So the Scots are obviously as poorly served by their rugby print media as we are in Ireland.
In fact, they had to import one of their journalists from Ireland.
That's right, yeah.
English.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
But so anyway, that was just me having a bit of a rant about something I saw on Twitter today. We have another question in from Declan, who asks...
So if he didn't pay you for a bet, it'd be Irishman from Scotland called English Welshers on a bet.
You've been saving that one up, haven't you?
Came straight out of the ether.
I'm genuinely disappointed I fixed the mic.
Come on.
Declan asks, in short, the media is reporting Ireland is back on track, when in reality we barely proved, if at all. Ireland continues to look like a team with only a plan A, with some flashes of creativity there. Genuinely wasn't a huge amount. As with England, you would wonder if we could score against a team with a lot of defence. I'm not too worried about Italy or France, and then we're going to talk about France in a bit, though they are two separate conversations, but I'm terrified of Wales and Cardiff, absolutely. The one fixture we haven't won under Schmidt. The Welsh defence won't be easy to break down, and they're acutely aware of the physical edge and rush defence to settle Ireland. We won't find an inch of space behind the defensive line, much like with England's back three. Please feel free to tell me I'm wrong and make me feel more confident. And then P.S. I counted 6 times the 4 Munster players shut out of the defensive line, none from any other province. It's worth noting that in contrast at Leinster, the players are comfortable in creating chaos in defence, midfield, and then forming a brick wall once inside the 22, in which they have perfect discipline. I see Carberry is learning his trade very well, as he seems to have forgotten this and picked up some bad habits, which will likely be attributed to nerves, but I do love to get a dig in.
No, Declan.
I find that hard to believe. No, yeah, I mean, it depends what you mean by back on track. I mean, we discussed it earlier. I mean, getting the win was the important thing.
I don't buy a lot of that.
This game exists kind of in its own little bubble. We had to get a win. It doesn't really matter about
the
next
couple
of games.
They're not the Harlem Globetrotters.
No. So you're not Globetrotters.
No, I don't buy a lot of that Matt Williams stuff. That he doesn't create. He plays low risk rugby.
Look at the try.
Of course.
Look at the try that Stockdale. There was about
for example
5 intricate little passes that created the space for Stockdale to run through.
Yeah, look here
and guys holding fellas back off the ball and little,
at that level, you don't win by spinning the ball around like a madman. So you just don't. I mean, teams who do that in international rugby lose.
Like, it's not 1991 where Sela can run the ball from behind his line. It just doesn't happen anymore.
One of the reasons why France have descended is because they haven't moved into this new paradigm. I mean, even the best team in the world, New Zealand, don't do that. They actually play low risk rugby. They just do it really, 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 really well. And Ireland are kind of in that same. We play that. England do the same thing. It's not low risk rugby is probably the wrong word. It's high percentage rugby. And
potato.
I know. It sounds like I'm splitting hairs, but there is a difference. I mean, there are risks taken, but the risks are minimised by repetition and
low risk, not no risk.
Yeah. And the risks are minimised by repetition and the quality of the players, and by putting them in positions that are favourable. So,
Sorry, go on.
To win at international level, because the teams certainly in the top tier are so close together in terms of quality. I mean, there's not a huge amount of difference between Ireland, Wales, New Zealand, England. You know, in terms of ability, not a huge amount. Maybe even South Africa, depending on how they're feeling. There's not a huge amount of difference between them. It's the team that maximises their own resources, makes the least mistakes, and forces the opposition into making the most mistakes that comes out on top. Games and tournaments in international rugby aren't won by playing like Fiji.
No, that's why Fiji haven't won the World Cup very often.
Well, it was interesting to hear O'Gara talking about, you know, I think Malloy brought it up with him about, we're not creating anything, we're not taking our chances when we're in the 22. And he said it's impossible. You know, you have to go through a certain number of phases and set it up and create the opportunity.
Yeah.
Rather than you're just not going to just suddenly
throw it to
three, and a guy, he might do it 1 in 1,000 times, you know, beat somebody on the outside, but you're not going to do it. You know, it's such a rare thing that a guy will miss a 1-on-1 tackle when you're just running straight at him. But create a 2-on-1, create some doubt in his mind, and he's not sure who to take. That's when the options are there to take a try.
And the thing is, even tries that are moments of genius, shall we say, are often accompanied by a moment of incompetence.
Yeah, well, like look at
like Joey Carbery's tried today.
Yeah.
I mean, those two guys, they should have nailed that tackle.
Of course, well, he ran right through the two of them.
You could argue, and like we've discussed it already, but you could argue that if Joey had taken the other decision in terms of what he was going to do in defence, because I mean, obviously this is arguing in hindsight. But if he follows Sam Johnson, that try doesn't get scored. But that's, you know,
he's got great hips as well, though, Joey. I mean, he seems to do that a lot, where he just does a little shimmy, and you know.
Those two guys, they should have stopped him.
They should have stopped him, but he.
And I guarantee if Hogg or Russell had done that to Sean O'Brien and Cian Healy, they'd have faced a video nasty on in the morning. So then, but the thing is, there's very rare a moment of genius that is sheer genius in and of itself. It's usually accompanied by a defence. And what you're trying to do when you're playing phased rugby and things like that is you're trying to create situations where you can create an error. So even if it's an error in numbering up, you know, and that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to force the opposition to make a mistake.
You're trying to force them to run out of numbers by having to commit players elsewhere. Or, like you say, deception, where they're committing them to the wrong player. Or, you know.
Yeah. So what you see a lot of constructed tries, like Stockdale's, where by moving the ball so quickly and pulling them left, right, and center, you create an error, and then the guy goes through. So that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to construct errors rather than moments of genius.
But Joe Schmidt seems to be able to do that
on
a fairly consistent basis. I mean, we can go back to the Leinster days of that amazing try that I think Luke Fitzgerald scored against Cardiff. Against Cardiff.
Nobody laid a finger on anybody.
Final.
Oh yeah.
You know, that was one of the best tries I think I've ever seen. That was another fantastic try.
It was a constructed try. It was a constructed error.
Well, that was the last time Sean O'Brien played in the Amlin Cup. He might be playing in it next year, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah. But so I think it's harsh to say that Ireland aren't playing well at the moment. I mean, that's a given. I mean, I don't think anyone would argue with that, from Joe Schmidt down to the program sellers. But I think
sport is a funny thing that way, though, as well. Though, you have one good game and you're great. You have one shit game and you're awful.
Like, do you think that we've had such expectation over the last 18 months? You know,
yes.
Maybe even going back 3 years.
Yes.
Beat the All Blacks in America. They came back there. You know, beat England in Lansdowne Road 2 years ago, and that kind of started the one down in South Africa. Obviously, then a year later, we won in Australia. We won the Grand Slam. We beat the All Blacks again. All of a sudden, like, I don't know whether you can continually keep up at that level. And at some point, they're thinking, like, lads, the season, you know, we've say under Schmidt left now. You've got 9 months, but the focus is in October, November. And I just think it must be very difficult to keep that level of intensity up here and then...
Well, it used to be said that Joe Schmidt engineered slumps in form at certain times of the year when he was with Leinster. Whether he does that, whether he really does that or not, I don't know. But I'd say he thinks it's no harm that we lost that game to England at the time we did.
I don't think. I mean,
obviously he'd rather win it.
I don't think he engineers slumps, but what he has is he's a team that's set up to manage he manages through slumps much better, because he is the team that has a basic pattern of play. That means that even if guys like say Bundy Aki was or whatever aren't quite on form, we can still manage our way through it. Rather than a team that's because it's not based on individuals, it's based on the team ethic. So if one or two guys are out of form or absent, I mean, it has to be remembered we have a huge number of absences at the moment.
Huge.
We can manage our way through those situations.
We need to replicate as many crazy situations as could happen down in or over in Japan.
Yeah.
Like, at the moment we're missing certainly one of our starting second rows, potentially two of the reserve second rows. We're missing, CJ, we say our starting. Okay. So we've brought in, Conan's played a full match of a Six Nations.
Which is
likewise,
both centres.
You've got both centres are out.
Like look what happened.
You've given Henshaw a game of fullback. I know he didn't have his best game ever, but he's played there. And if something happens in South Africa in Japan against South Africa that potentially he has to come in and fill in at fullback, he could actually do it.
Yeah, well, like in that game, you've seen what happens when your two centres were missing. Look what happened when Eddie Jones finally got his centre pairing right. He got Farrell at 10, and he's got a big bruiser at 12, and a creative player at 13. Like,
bring back Ben Teo.
Seriously, and the same thing with his back row. They were the things that Eddie Jones was given yards about last season. How he didn't know who his 7 was. He didn't know what his best back row was. Didn't know what his centre partnership was. All of a sudden, he gets those two things right, and look what happens.
Yeah.
And if you consider that we were down, that both of those centre pairing were down a back rower, as you say, and arguably several more. Dan Levy would have been the starting 7 last year. O'Brien was injured, but when you see those combinations messed with, and we still got through the game, we still won. The sky isn't actually falling on this Irish team. It doesn't mean that it can't be falling on them come November, or come October, but we're hopeful that they can manage their way through it, and the more exposure they get when they're down players at this time of the year, the better, because it's a serious. It's what would you say, Dave? It's their money. It's their biggest earner. Like, nobody makes money out of the World Cup.
The cash pinata.
That's it. Nobody makes money. All the World Rugby get all the money from the World Cup. So
we question in from Mike Whelan actually. Just go back to Sean O'Brien. Shouldn't Ireland have given Shawnee the money so he didn't have to leave? You could argue that. I mean, the RFU take a very actuarial view of these things. They look at how much they'll give him, how much return they'll get for that money, which is the important thing. And at the IRFU policy, we've said it before, we saw it before with numerous other players, that once you hit 32, you're only going to get a year.
What did Jamie? Did Jamie not get an extension?
He's still under contract, or he would be if he hadn't retired. He was contracted right up to the World Cup.
He had an exceptional injury profile.
Record, yeah. So the actuarial look at him would be, okay, he'll come back from this and he'll be fine, because he's only ever been out once before. So, but whereas you can't, I mean, much as I love Sean O'Brien, you can't make that argument with him. And it's a 3-year contract. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're 32, and you're going to finish at 35 anyway, to have that all sorted,
and
it's a big thing.
Like, it's not a new thing. Something similar happened to, say, Shane Byrne back, I think, in 2005. He was offered a 1-year deal, and Saracens offered him a 2, and he was in his mid-30s. So he took the 2-year deal, like.
The same with Nathan Hines.
Yeah, he got a 3-year actually in Claremont.
Whereas the RFU were only prepared to offer him a 1-year extension.
That's just the nature of the beast.
It's just the nature of the beast.
Like, see, the thing about it is that us as fans are all wanting to keep Sean O'Brien because he's a legend and he's a fabulous player, and yes, I'd love to keep him, but the people who are making the decisions, they've got a number of things there. Like, it's a cold professional thing. They don't decide on emotion like we probably would.
They're not fans.
They're not. Well, they are as well, probably.
Well,
but when they sit down,
they're not driven by the emotional side of it.
Exactly. When they sit down, they have to look at it completely coldly and go, Dan Levy, Josh Van der Fleer, Shorty Murphy. You know, they've got all these options who are not in their 30s. And then they look at John, and then probably look at his injury record, and they look at, and you know, I'm sure he was offered, whether it was a Central deal or a Leinster deal, I'm sure he was offered some kind of a contract, but it obviously wasn't A as long or B.
But look, you know, you just go back a couple of seasons ago. Mike Ross, you know, if you read his book, like he's talking about, he goes in, he's hoping to get an extension, and Cullen basically says to him, "Nothing here for you, Mike." They soldiered together. You know what I mean? Like they were in the heart of many a battle in the south of France, and they celebrated their victories and so on, and yet when it comes down to the end of the day, Cullen had to make a decision, and there was no sentiment there. It was
he would have fancied an extra year, I think. All right,
it's all about the time. money.
But like when you've Tadhg Furlong champing at your heels, you know.
Yeah. Well, at the time, Leinster had Tadhg Furlong and they had Marty Moore. You know, they didn't.
But what I mean is, there was no sentiment. There was no. Mike, you've got 60 caps for Ireland.
That's what I'm saying.
You've played in 2 European Cup finals. You know,
everything feeds into it. I mean, sentiment is probably the last thing on the list that they feed into it. I mean, I mean, as fans, we'd love to keep all our players, all of them, all the time.
That's it.
But you just can't.
You just need to invent that machine, Dave. That time machine to turn back time. You know.
We all want to stockpile all the players.
I believe Cher has one.
Oh yes, she does.
We don't want Munster getting their players. We don't want Ulster getting their players. We don't want our players to leave and go abroad. We don't
want Ranger playing for Ireland.
We literally want to have everything. Like we want to hoard all these players and not even play some of them in games. Just have them on the shelf there for Players don't want that. You know who wants?
Okay, boys. I'm going to move on to the other games. Okay, very quickly.
Good man.
So Italy played Wales just after our match on Saturday. Wales won 26-15. I just thought, the Welsh bench just made the difference when they came on.
Yeah. Wales were comfortable for most of the match, and then they brought on the bench to give them a run ahead of next week.
And they had Alan Wynne, legend, on the bench. Yeah. Let's face it.
Alan Wynne, legend.
But like, once again, Italy just shooting themselves in the foot, conceding umpteen penalties. They conceded 11 penalties compared to 6 for Wales, but they were conceding penalties that Biggar was just slotting over. Like in the first half an hour, he kicked 4. Do you know what I mean? They raced away to a lead. Then Italy kind of came back into it. They weren't being slaughtered out the gate. No. And then 20 minutes to go, the big guns came on.
But like Wales selected a load of randomers, you would say, like people who hadn't
I'd say
had a run at all.
I'd say the Welsh selection pattern will be very similar to the Irish selection pattern for the game against Italy.
Possibly.
In terms of giving guys experience. But the thing is that there's a time and a place to give away penalties, and Italy picked the wrong time and the wrong place almost every chance they got. But
so like that was Wales 11th. They're starting the motor now. There was their 11th win on the trot, and unfortunately, Italy's 19th loss on the trot. In the Six Nations.
Six Nations, yeah. Oh man, well, I'd like to I'd like Wales to keep that going for another few weeks.
Yes, definitely. At least
one finish on the 16th of March.
Victory.
Oh yes, for the biggest house versus village game in the world.
Okay, very very quickly because we want to get to the Leinster game as well. England beat the worst possible French team I think I've ever seen, 44-8.
I don't think beat does it justice.
No,
Jason.
Humiliated.
It was a joke
Destroyed.
Of a French team when you saw Ntamack coming on, looking round, going,
where am I playing?
What position am I playing? Am I the full back now? Where am I? And the previous week, Vahamina
was there,
not knowing he was vice captain.
Was there a full back? Because it didn't look like it when you saw the high up shots.
It was shocking. But England, fair play to them, were absolutely relentless, and they were merciless with that kick. And they were kicking to the same side of the field as they were against us. It's obviously, it's in our little playbook whether it'll be they'll do the same against
a big
Wales.
Mother coming down that wing.
Well, that's it.
They relentlessly targeted Penno.
Yeah.
So they did.
But like he scored a fantastic try. Yeah. You know, like he had gas to burn, but was hardly breaking out of a jog in defence running back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they had no fullback, or I don't know where the fullback was, and his holidays up on the wing or something.
But at fullback.
They weren't sweeping. There was no sweeper. There was no. You should have your scrum half and your fullback sweeping in behind. They were just everyone up in the line. So there was acres of space that England were kicking.
But that's hard work, Jason.
Well, maybe so.
Huget makes Frano look like he's not a lazy
that's
player.
Hard work.
Will Brunel last?
No.
Like, he was brought in as a stopgap, but he's there 18 months.
I'll tell you why he'll last, or if he does last, why he'll last. Because nobody else wants that job.
Not coming into the World Cup.
Not coming
it might
into
end
the
up
World
like they did in 2011, where the players run the show again.
Well,
Philippe Saint-André and
and Lieberman, wasn't it?
Sorry, Lieberman, yeah.
Something's going to have to happen because, I mean, at this point in time, I've never seen French rugby. There's been a couple of articles written this week about French rugby, and most of them are true.
They're true because you couldn't make it up.
I know, but what I'm saying is, I mean, in terms of it's inaccurate. There's been a couple. I mean, Demented wrote one. There's been a couple in some of the English broadsheets about French rugby culture and how it is not. It hasn't moved on. I mean, the worst thing to happen to the French national team was television, because it highlighted all those French backs with their lovely tries and all that kind of stuff, but that was built on a basis of ruthless and efficient violence from a pack. You can't do that anymore. So that platform is gone. Then you've got a situation where you've got French teams that are very successful at age grade level. I mean, one of the best players I saw in the last 10 years at under 20 level was Baptiste Serin when he was on that French under 20 team. But he hasn't progressed one iota. And there's a whole rake of them. And the French are talented players, but they're shit professionals.
Yeah. I think that might be it.
They've all the talent in the world, but just when it comes to actually being good pros.
It was interesting this morning on Morning Ireland. They were interviewing Bernard Jackman, and he actually said, and sort of going through the different matches, and then eventually about the France match. And he says, actually, I'm on the phone to you from the French Rugby Union's headquarters in Paris. So I thought it was interesting why he didn't go into why he was there, but I thought it was interesting that he was there.
Advice on dessert trolleys, perhaps.
Well, there you go. That says it all.
But I mean, the thing, one thing I was thinking about there this afternoon, I was thinking about why has French rugby not moved forward in the same way? Because in every other aspect of French life, French are as good as a great at a number of things. Why have they not? I mean, their soccer team, the world is filled with French soccer players,
and they've won 2 World Cups in the last 20 years.
And the rugby team hasn't moved on. And one of the things that just struck me, and I'm not saying it's the reason, but I'm saying it's why we've gotten so good is rugby in France is quite insular, whereas rugby in these islands in Britain and Ireland isn't. Because, our best players, and Wales' best players, and Scotland's best players, and England's best players spend, 3 months together every 4 years, right, and learn off one another. We the famous story about Brian O'Driscoll looking at Johnny Wilkinson and realising if he wanted to be a top pro, he had to be more like that. And you've got all these kind of exchange of ideas, and then guys bring that back into their environments, whereas France doesn't have that.
But they do have, like, if you look, take Racing Metro for example. I mean, I would imagine somewhere around a fifth of the squad is foreigners. Would I be right in saying that?
I'd say more. But
okay,
and a lot
of other squads are, the bigger teams, Toulouse, Clermont, etc., all have large numbers of Kiwis, Aussies, Saffers, few Irish, few Brits.
It's about signing the right foreign players, though. I mean, I'm not sure how much Racing Metro's players are going to learn about professionalism from Simon Zebo. Or indeed Finn Russell.
But I guarantee you they're going to learn a lot from Ryan.
Oh, they would learn a huge amount from Donnacha Ryan, absolutely, yeah. But he's one guy. I mean,
okay, but Paul O'Connell in Stade Francais, for example, I'm sure they're going to learn a lot from him. I'm sure Racing players have learned a lot from Ronan O'Gara.
It's about having the right players. Like, say, we were talking about Toulon. Toulon had an exceptional collection of players. Not that they were the world all-stars, but there was a reason for that, because they were incredible professionals. And I'm not sure that kind of level of professionalism, the Johnny Wilkinson model, has seeped its way into the greater French rugby culture.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem to have. I mean, we saw the evidence of it on Sunday.
It was horrendous. It was like watching. I mean, I was on the phone to a friend of mine tonight, and we were saying it just reminded you of a probables and possibles team. Not randomers, but just fellas that were selected, and you rock up with a train ticket and you arrive into Lansdowne Road, and you're in the dressing room for an hour before the match, and you run through a few line-out calls, and, like years ago, I remember playing in trial matches, and it was like that. You were literally introducing yourself to the other second row, and, saying, what calls do we use? What line-out calls do we do? Do you play left or right? It just seemed like that,
Well, we saw that. I mean, what position am I coming on in?
Yeah.
Who's the captain now? What do you mean, it's me?
Yeah.
We've seen all that in the last few weeks. And it's sad to see, because I love French rugby, Coach. I love French rugby. I mean, we grew up on it, and that's the thing. But something needs to be done. They really do need to urgently address it.
Yeah, because like they're now 10th in the world, and they are closer to, I think I heard, to Spain, like on points, than they are to Ireland.
Wow,
that's incredible.
I did point out a couple of years ago that
you
last World Cup would be that France were soon going to drop out of the tier 1.
They're on the way. They're on the way.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I wouldn't be surprised if Italy target that game. It's in Rome.
Yeah, and
it's in Rome. Oh.
And culturally, France is a big game for them. That's their England because of the French influence on Italian rugby.
Anyway,
moving on.
Speaking of Italian rugby,
exactly, good segue there. So we're Pro 14 next weekend. We take on Zebre. Surprisingly, the match is played in Aroni's old ground.
Mm-hmm.
Which
don't know what the thinking behind that is, but
but they're obviously trying to spread.
Yeah, that's it. It's brand expansion, for want of a better phrase.
I mean, it must it was a club ground, obviously, for quite a few years before even Aroni joined the Pro 12 as it was. So there would have been teams. So there would have been an Italian club playing there on a regular basis.
Still is,
presumably in their local league.
The Excellenza,
and remember that the original Zebre roster was fundamentally the Aroni roster.
Mm-hmm.
When the switchover happened, they just moved all the players. It was a couple of 100 miles up the road, kind of thing. So
is it that far? I have no idea.
I don't know, but I'm just saying. I'm just talking. It was a bit of an Indianapolis Colts job, Baltimore Colts.
Yeah. So this is our 11th game against them, and it's the one we have not lost to them in those 11 games. And two very different positions in the Pro 14 league. We're obviously streaking ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're on 58 points.
Yeah.
And they are bottom of their table. They lost their last 3 games. They're not in a good place at the moment.
I have to say, it's hard to get excited about this game for several reasons. One, we don't really need the points. Like, if we win it, great. If we lose it, whatever. No, obviously the players won't have that attitude, but as a fan, it's hard to get, and also it's
that could be
like you said, it's the bottom team in the.
It could be their biggest ever victory if they win this game, and I don't mean that.
We've got a big target on our backs, being the champs.
They've only won 3 of their 4. I think last week we said, the Zebre they are improving. They've improved. They've won 3 games, but they've lost
10 or whatever.
11.
Yeah.
Well,
the thing that could generate a certain amount of excitement is the selection.
Mm-hmm.
Fergus McFadden could be back.
McFadden's back in full training apparently. The other thing, there's been the inevitable discussion about which 2 into 3 will go, and the assumption is that
Ferdy and JGP.
But is this a game where we can take a risk on giving a bit more time to Hugh O'Sullivan?
Possibly.
Or maybe Patterson.
Oh, I think you'll see a lot of the old Leinster A team.
Yeah, we could decide to play Lowe and Fardy, because I do think we need Fardy. And we could decide to give Lowe a run because he's had a bit of time off, and because you've still got Ross Byrne there, you've still got plenty of strength in the back row. Josh Murphy's back in training again as well.
Jack
McGrath could get a run out. We have, the pack will be strong even what we're left.
We've also got a fair bit of back 3 players, like Adam Byrne is back from Ireland. As you mentioned, Fergus McFadden.
Barry Daly.
Do you not think they might reward some more squad players?
Yeah, they could well do. But my point is that they don't necessarily need Lowe.
One or two of the guys that they might want to reward, for example, Keenan's injured.
Is Ross Maloney injured?
I don't know.
Just I saw him doing the Schools Cup draw. That's usually a sign that they're injured.
Well, you you could reward the broader squad, but you could also, I mean, there is an advantage of being able to run some game time into guys who like James Lowe had a compulsory sit down, you know, so you could put some game time in him. You know, I do think we need Farrelly because we need somebody who's a bit of a leader. Although Reece Ruddock was back training with Leinster today, so you know if you have him, then that maybe that balance shifts. Mm-hmm. So I mean, we do have. I mean, I can't see much change. I'd say Noel Reid will play. I'd say Conor O'Brien will play again. Who's been superb. Mm-hmm. Rory O'Loughlin is there. There's actually, you know, we've actually got a really
there's plenty of players there.
Players
before you even go to the academy, which is stuffed with Conor O'Brien's academy.
Yeah.
Which is stuffed with players. Will they get Penny back from the under-20s?
Well, the policy is that the Pro 14 outranks the under-20 championship, and that's always been the policy. So if we wanted them, we could have them. But do we necessarily need? Well, Will O'Connors is injured as well.
We are on for a slam in the under-20s.
Yeah, but sure, there's no game this week. Maybe getting a run would be. I mean, we've Deegan, we've Doris, we've Murphy, we've Ruddock.
None of them are sevens, though.
No, I'm just talking about in terms of the pack in general. Sorry, no, you're right there. Obviously, we've Bent, we've the Burns.
We've
Jack McGrath.
We've enough.
Dooley. Zach.
Yeah.
Now, we could go out and get beaten by Zebre, and, you know, it's all terrible and all that, but, like, it's hard to see, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's hard to see what getting beaten by Zebre would actually have any effect whatsoever on the league.
Well, what I was going to say is the Kings, for example, I'd rather go to play Zebre in Italy than I would play the Kings in South Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, even though they're not on the high felt, they're down at sea level.
It's a long trek.
It's a long trek is one thing, but it's also they play bloody better at home than Zebre do.
Yeah. And they run the bejesus off you.
Yeah.
So they do. They really do.
The only thing is Mick Bradley's team, so he presumably wants to stick one up on Leinster.
Well, he used to do it when he coached Connacht, so
yeah,
you just never know.
I think that we could pick a number of selections that would be more than adequate to do the job.
And if it didn't,
and even at that, doing that, taking a few risks selectorially, they still should be able to.
But like Zebra are brutal. They are
brutal.
They've got 19 points from their 14 games, but they are 19 points behind the Cheetahs.
You mean brutal? You mean brutal in the Irish sense of the word, rather than the American sense of the word?
Yeah, they are terrible. Like we are 21 points ahead of Treviso, who are in second.
Yeah. That's what I think. Ridiculous. That's why I think there's an opportunity.
Shouldn't be allowed
to take a risk on maybe the halfbacks, especially. You know, I'm not one. I mean, when Nick McCarthy announced he was leaving, everyone was saying, "Oh, throw him out the door." Blah blah blah. Now, as it happens, he's injured. I'm not one of these guys. But even if Nick McCarthy was around, this would actually be a game where I'd be looking to get a bit more game time into the likes of O'Sullivan and Patterson. The opportunity is there.
Yeah. Well, anyway, sure. We'll see how we go, and we'll report back on it next week. Just go very quickly through some of the other fixtures. Munster take on the Kings at home.
Munster.
Oh yeah, Munster. Yeah, definitely.
Edinburgh Dragons in Edinburgh. Ospreys Ulster in Ospreys.
Ospreys,
I'd have to say, yeah. Depends on who Ulster get back.
Be a lot less of a foregone conclusion than the first two, anyway.
Yeah, depends on who Ulster get back, I suppose. I mean, if they got back, you know, a couple of guys, maybe like Addison, for example.
Yeah.
Might make a big difference.
I don't see why they shouldn't have him. He hasn't.
Or Cooney.
Yeah.
They might even get Cooney back. So, you know, it could go either way.
Although they might be saving him for the Italy match.
He could well get a start there. So you'd have to favour Ospreys just on the balance.
Yeah, and it's in Swansea.
Yeah.
Connacht Cheetahs.
Where is it?
It's in Connacht.
I have to say Connacht.
You'd have to say Connacht because I don't think the Cheetahs will ever have seen weather like that before.
They might get the land back.
Splitting the stones.
Yeah.
Well, it could be a hurricane as well.
I mean, they've actually...
You missed one out there, actually, Jason.
No, I haven't finished
the most important one.
Connacht are actually going to be suffering from an unusual number of call-ups that they mightn't have suffered from before. I mean, obviously, Tom Farrell will be back, but he'll have been away, which may have disrupted preparation. Obviously, the two locks.
They might get one of them back.
They might get one of them back. They might get... But
they won't get Bundy
Eki. Maybe?
They might. While the other two guys are injured, those guys could be wrapped up in cotton.
Yeah,
with Toner out, the other two guys...
Byrne could be back, though, I think.
Yeah, but I still say that you know, belt and braces, that they mightn't give either of them back.
Yeah. John, the one you were alluding to, Treviso Scarlets.
Yeah, that's a big game, and it's
Yeah.
in Treviso.
Yeah.
Like, if Scarlets aren't really on for that one now, admittedly, Treviso give up. There's something like
similar to-
60% of the Italian.
I'd imagine there's something similar to
Team.
Leinster's
Yeah.
contingent.
So on that basis, you'd have to favour the Scarlets, but you just never know. Travelling over to Italy, you just never know. Scarlets don't win it, they're in serious trouble.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they
Yeah.
they really need it. It's a very important game for them. You have the tables there, Jason.
I do, yes. Scarlets are in fourth on 35, just the same points as Ulster. So if they lose that game and Ulster win, you could see them falling out of the top four.
Yeah, and on the other side, Ospreys are in a similar position.
Ospreys are in third, same level on points, with Connacht 38 points.
So if Connacht win and Ospreys lose, you know.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And finally, the other game is Cardiff against Murdo's Crowd, Glasgow.
In Cardiff.
In Cardiff, yeah.
Well, again, Glasgow give up
A lot of
a
players.
huge amount of players. And they're not in great form, and they're travelling to Cardiff, who don't give up that many players.
You kind of have to favour Cardiff, but a lot of the times when you favour Cardiff, that's when they kind of
Let
They let you down, don't they?
They don't let me down. They let John down.
Yeah,
They let John down.
They are a second,
Waiting for
second
that.
team.
I mean, I'd say Murdoch can watch that game in hope, but not too much expectation. I'd say it would probably be the wisest way to approach that match.
I feel like Luigi the boat builder on this.
Okay, go on.
I'm not telling that whole joke because it's gone on forever, but basically, I say once about Cardiff, I say it once, and I get lacquery for 3 years.
Right, yeah.
One other bit of news that just jumped out at me when I was looking at the Pro 14 website was a lad called Carl Kraus has been appointed the head of operations for Pro 14, and he used to be the former
South African
Kings CEO and Eastern Province CEO. So I think they're obviously looking to now. He's going to move to Dublin, but I think they wanted somebody with a South African background, knowledge of how the.
Seem to have
When
someone
do
from
you use
everywhere.
Eastern Province?
I'm not sure.
Next week.
Well, the reason I ask that is because that part of South African rugby's been an absolute fucking shambles for a while. I mean, between the Spears, the Kings, the Elephants, there's been a lot of scandal down there actually about misuse of funds, all sorts of stuff. So now some of it might be, some of it may have been politically motivated by political rivals of Cheeky Watson and stuff like that. So there's a lot, but it. I'd love to know when because I want to make sure he's clear of that kind of messing.
Yeah, I'm not sure now.
Sure, they've done due diligence on it.
I'm sure they have. Yeah,
He's looks a young enough guy. Like he's moving up to Dublin anyway from Port Elizabeth, and
You see how he
I
goes.
think he's only in his early mid 30s.
Well, I think they've got a representative from all of the 5 nations at this stage, and the.
But I think they
14.
want to leverage on his knowledge of.
well,
South
absolutely.
African.
I mean, if he's got experience of that market, because it is a huge market.
Well, he is a marketeer as well, isn't he? He's something that's.
I think he's a lawyer actually by trade.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
I thought that was his what he was working for the Kings as.
He is
a market grower.
He was chief operations officer for the Kings and chief executive officer for.
Which was wish him luck.
Yeah.
You know, there's one thing we didn't discuss was are you finished talking about the Pro 14?
Yes.
Right. It was actually a good weekend for most of Ireland's teams.
Absolutely.
Over the weekend. Universities won, the club side won the Dalriada Cup. They drew on Saturday, but they had a holdover win, as it were. And the under-20s won and won quite well. And the women won and won quite well.
Yeah,
that was,
got a bonus point.
That was an important win for the Irish women's team because they took it off at Shellacan last week against a professional English side. So it's good for them to go well on, and they did play. They actually played.
Yeah, what's that game on Friday night?
Yeah, and they're missing players. You know, they're still not up to full strength.
I think they were missing a good few against England, weren't they? A lot of the ladies that play for sevens were down in Sydney, I think. So they need. Obviously, we don't have such a large pool or squad of players that we can have 2 distinct 7s and 15s, so they have to mix them.
But they were missing some of the specialist 15s, if you like.
Yeah.
I mean, Lindsay Peat wasn't available and stuff like that. So I mean, I thought it was a good win. It was a good performance as well. So hopefully it's Adam Greig seems to be getting things back in shape after.
I actually went to the ladies' match on Friday against England, and I tell you, he couldn't have been nicer. He was coming over and thanking everybody, like literally thanking people for coming. Now they got a great crowd. Like, they got 4,500.
Yeah, they had a very good crowd.
Yeah, it was good.
At a crap time.
Yeah, 5 o'clock was tricky enough to get across the city too.
But you know, he's adding a bit of positivity into it, which was needed after, you know, after a poor World Cup that was disappointing for everyone, kind of thing. So it's good.
Was such an anticlimax because they had, you know,
they've done well up to it.
They obviously had the World Cup. Yeah. They had built a bit of momentum, even with I know it was a few years before, but they had the Grand Slam and then they had the Championships, and it was just a pity, kind of almost.
Because it was a great event. The World Cup was a great event. I mean, it was really well run and stuff like that, and blah blah blah. But the Irish team themselves were disappointed about how they performed.
I'm sure they were. Yeah. Anyway, the under-20s as well are going well. There's still a long way to go.
Slammage.
There's still an option of it. Yeah.
Like they had a great win against England.
France are a big prospect at under-20s.
Against England, they really
against
were.
The odds.
Yeah.
I mean,
the bookies had a 21-point difference.
But they gave England 2 very, very easy tries, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
like they almost, and it's made it so difficult for themselves, and yet they still got the bonus point at the very end.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like I always say, all you really want from your under-20s team is that, you know, 3 or 4 guys will come out of it each year and go into professional rugby, and it looks like this team will deliver. At least that. So there's plenty of photo. Liam Turner apparently, we didn't see the Scotland game because it wasn't televised, but Liam Turner apparently played really, really well. Leinster centre. Hawkshaw's going well in the centre, and obviously young Harry Byrne as well. So it's good for Leinster. Good
and
for
there's the young flanker as well, was playing.
Scott Penny.
Yeah. All right, boys, as ever, thanks a million, and thanks very much for watching. Cheers.